Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first ever Impact Launch webinar. We are so excited to have everyone who's with us. We're looking forward to this great adventure. And so a couple of housekeeping items I want to mention is, as you know, this is what we term a live podcast. And so the first part of this program will be a podcast type platform and structure. And then you will have the opportunity to engage with the experts that we have speaking with us today in live rapid fire Q&A. And so I wanted to also just reiterate and speak to the heart of our heartbeat when it comes to Impact Launch. And so here's where we're at. Our company, Caldwell Business Group, we are a management consulting firm. We specialize in working with nonprofit organizations in a number of ways. And what we find is that there's a lot of organizations out there that really need help. And there are resources, but it just seems like the resources that are out there that are affordable for all organizations or even individuals for leadership development can sometimes be pricey, and/or it's kind of the same information, the same content. We've been to conference after conference, and we see the same workshops going on. And so our goal, our lifeblood behind this is to create a resource for nonprofit leaders to engage with very successful business people, other successful nonprofit organizations, and learn real world advice. But not only that, to learn it in a format to where you can engage, but then also provide you tools to make it applicable to you as a leader of your organization and let that translate out. And so instead of spending thousands of dollars to go to a conference and attend and go to numerous workshops, maybe miss out on some you wanted to be at, hear some motivational speaking, and then come home and forget about it, we want to create something that will translate out into your organization. So that's our reason. That's the lifeblood behind why we're doing what we're doing. And so we're happy to have everybody who's involved in this beta be a part of this, because you're able to get in on the ground floor. And so we're so happy to have everybody involved who's involved in this. And so we're looking forward to this. So over the next 3 months, what you can expect is we will be hosting a monthly live podcast, and we will be sharing. This time, we shared with you our flight plan that takes some of the information we're going to talk about today and allows you to start taking action already before we even have this podcast. We're going to add different things, different elements to this, to give you a full taste of what the full program will be. And in return, like we said, all we ask for is for your advice and your input into what you think makes this valuable and or what you think doesn't make it valuable. So looking forward to it. And so we're excited about today. So today, who we have on is David Terry and David Smith. And they are partners, and they own a restaurant here in Amarillo called Chop Chop. And Chop Chop is a great place to go eat. I enjoy it myself. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Chop Chop here in a minute. I'm going to let them explain it to you in greater detail. But I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about who we lovingly call the Davids. For starters, David Terry, who up on your screen is the man on the left. David he brings a wealth of business expertise as an entrepreneur, as a business coach. He also does a significant amount of speaking and training. And here locally in Amarillo in 2001, he co-founded WT Enterprise Center, which is a business incubator, and then where he served as executive director from 2007 to 2016. So he now serves as the entrepreneur in residence there as well. So in addition, David is a busy man. He's co-CEO and partner of Chop Chop Rice, which I just explained earlier. It's a fast casual Asian grill, great place to eat. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about that here in a minute. So he holds a Bachelor of Business Administration and Finance and an MBA in Marketing from West Texas A&M University. So he's also a Growth Wheel certified advisor, an international coach, Federation certified professional business coach, and a licensed facilitator of the coaching clinic. Also, David Smith, to the right, is the other part of the Davids. He's the other half. And so David has a history of owning and operating successful businesses, training, coaching, and mentoring small business owners. Both of these Davids are both personal friends of mine. And I'll tell you, when it comes to coaching and just talking about life and talking about business and how to be good business owners, I have taken so much advice from them. And so it's great. But David Smith, he began his career in the restaurant industry, moved up as the operating partner of several Jason's Deli locations. And then he purchased his first Beef O'Brady's franchise restaurant in 2004. That quickly grew to own 2 locations, one in Amarillo and one in Lubbock. And so with Beef O'Brady's, David earned top performing store in the System Award in 2010 and the top marketing performance in the local market award in 2014. After a successful exit as a franchisee, David became co-CEO and partner of Chop Chop Rice, providing the operational knowledge and strength to grow Chop Chop and expand it into a franchise brand. David owns a Bachelor of Business Administration and Business Management from West Texas A&M University. So we're so happy to have you all on. And I'm going to cut to our live feed now. And you're going to be able to see us now. Again, back to the thought process on this being a beta. This might not be a perfect webinar, but we're all here together and we're going to have a good time. So you should be able to see me. I'm talking, and then the Davids. There they are in real life. So David Terry, David Smith, welcome, and thank you so much for being on this webinar today. So I gave a brief introduction, the best I could, but I would like for you to have the opportunity to tell us a little bit more about yourself. And then I'd just like for you to start with telling us the story of Chop Chop. And just give us a history.
Okay, well, I'm David Terry, and Chop Chop is something I'm absolutely passionate about. I love growing businesses. When I was 30 years old, and that's been a few years ago, after founding the WT Enterprise Center, I had a desire to own 10% of 10 companies as kind of what I considered then to be a side hustle. You know, those were investments. I love small business. I felt like that's where I could win. And what a strange goal. The only reason I think it was 10% of 10 companies might have been because that equaled the equivalent of 100%. But anyway, so my first investment was with a friend of mine. We went to school together, and we used to go to a Japanese steakhouse and eat hibachi fried rice about every 2 weeks. And he wrote a business plan and this was another David that we got our MBAs together. Wrote another business plan for the Chop Chop company. That was back in the age of when Panera Bread was just starting and Chipotle was just starting this fast casual concept. So we'd go to a Japanese steakhouse, spend 2 hours, pay $20 and come out smelling like a fried shrimp. And we felt like that we could do that in a fast casual way. And so wrote the business plan, opened the first store, and it opened like gangbusters. And I was a minority partner in that business. And pretty soon, some things that I saw started falling down. That the work ethic, a lot of the things that I thought about my then partner kind of started falling apart. And when some things started needing to be held accountable, they just weren't. So in 2007, we reached a point where the bank actually called the note. And I remember I was at a seminar in New Orleans in the middle of January of 2007, and they said, we're calling the note. We've not been paid. And then the landlord said that we hadn't been paid rent. There was just a lot of things that were happening. And so we sat down in front of the banker, and the banker basically looked at my business partner then and said, "What are you going to do?" And he kind of buried his head in his hands and said, "I don't know." And the banker looked at me and said, "You're a 100% guarantor and a minority owner. What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, if we can, I'll take over everything." And so that kind of that's when I took over the operations of Chop Chop in 2007. And David Smith and I we had known each other from a previous relationship. He had been in the barbecue business, and I was at the Small Business Development Center, and David was looking at potentially buying a barbecue restaurant. That's where we first got to know each other. And he had been involved as an advisor to Chop Chop with the mutual friend of ours. But he chose wisely not to invest at that point and open his Beef O'Brady's franchises. But about 7 years into it, I was still managing, leading the WT Enterprise Center. We had the one store at Chop Chop. It had grown, but I had to come to a point where I needed to say, I need to either go all in on Chop Chop, or I need to sell it, or I need to partner with someone. At that point, I did not know the restaurant business. I had grown the restaurant to the point that I could grow it, and I needed somebody who had the ability to take it to another level. And so David Smith was very much involved in the startup and the beginning. And I, at that point, approached him to, "Hey, you want to just buy this?" And he came back to me, and we've really come to understand the value in our partnership. But he's going to tell you exactly what he means and what he wants, and I appreciate that about him. He said, "No, I think I'd rather partner, but I want to go all in on this deal." And so he invested in 2014. We were able to grow 2 stores in 2015. We opened a store in Lubbock. We opened another store at that time. And now Chop Chop has 4 restaurants, 2 in Lubbock, 2 in Amarillo. And we started franchising in 2016. We've got our first franchise candidate coming up. We're working on that. Yeah, in a couple of weeks. So that's kind of the Chop Chop story. We were in a ditch. We had a lot of trades payable, and there was just a lot of junk that happened in the first failed partnership that I got free from. And then I called 2014, 7 years after I had owned it outright, my year of jubilee, when David Smith found an opportunity to invest and help us to take the restaurant really to a new level. And I think that's the value of partnerships. We want to be a little vulnerable with you guys today, but talking about, that this is not easy, but it's worth it. And I think we get a lot of value from being in business. We get a lot of value from working together. We had to do a lot to make the brand, the systems, the processes for Chop Chop better, and that's what Smith is good at. We feel like we're in the people business, leading. So there's just a lot of things that having the partnership that we do has been valuable for me and my business career, and I think he would agree that some of that's been helpful for him as well.
For sure.
We want to develop, and we enjoy being in business together.
Well, and as I hear him tell the story of Chop Chop, and Scott, we visited that it was our partnership that really drew you to inviting us onto this. And we appreciate that. It's really exciting and been fun to put this together. But as I'm hearing him tell the story, I think the Chop Chop story is a story of partnerships. When it was opened in 2004, Dave mentioned that he was kind of the financial side, and his partner, ironically, was my college roommate. So it was fun to help my old roommate develop this, the initial look, feel, and system of a Chop Chop. I love building restaurants. I just love it. But as we go through this presentation, it's interesting to hear him tell the partnership evolution, the wins, the losses, and everything in between. But it was a partnership that developed between Dave and the third David. Partnerships that failed because they weren't matching up, and really the reason we're sitting here today is the success of a partnership, is the balance of the talents, is the balance of who we are, and certainly knowing what we don't know and seeking out those answers through the strengths of others.
You bet. So I want to back up real quick and talk a little bit about, so David Terry, when you took over 2007, this was an organization that was in crisis. It was at risk. Tell me.
That's a bad day.
Yeah. So paint a picture for us about, what were those emotions like for you? What feelings did you have during that period?
Yeah, I just get emotional thinking about it, but I remember, the banking relationship was so important to me. I had invested this money. I was basically, the bank invested in us because of the relationships that I had with the bank. And I'm not ashamed to say it was Happy State Bank. And gosh, I'm a believer in me out of how important it is to communicate with your banker. When you're in a ditch, you need to talk to people. You need to enlist people to help you on the journey. And the worst thing you can do is crawl in a hole and hope that time heals this stuff.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest thing, is that I saw a bank and a bank partner, again, the story of partnerships, that believed in me, believed in my ability to take this restaurant concept and turn it around. They hadn't been paid. The landlord hadn't been paid. There were about $50,000 of trades payable in Amarillo that had not been paid at that point. So and I'm working full time at another job that my mentor had just died 3 months earlier. So if you want to get into the emotions of all this, that's kind of where that was. In November of 2006, I took over the operation of the Enterprise Center because my boss and mentor, Don Taylor, passed away as well.
So I can't imagine the feeling of desperation and then that feeling of, how's this even going to work?
Yeah.
At all.
And you go to your wife and you say, well, the bank called the note. Guess what? We now own a restaurant. And so I'm working 60 hours a week in the Enterprise Center, and I come home and I'm working, evenings and weekends just to get the restaurant where it needs to be as well. And thank goodness, she stuck by me through those years, and it took a toll on time. It took a toll on family, but you get through it, and you rely on other people.
That's right. Yeah.
Strength there as well. And
so in the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it does talk about that as, what highly effective people are able to effectively and truly assess, this is what I'm strong at, not only as an individual, but even as an organization. This is where I have strength and I can provide something. But then they honestly look into where gaps exist as well. And so that's the step that you took in bringing David Smith on as a partner in this. But you talk about, so there's not only that relationship, there's also external gaps that you had, and it all depended on your partnerships, your relationships with the bank, with other stakeholders, but primarily with David Smith and bringing him on as partner in 2014, and bringing it from an organization that's at risk, in crisis, to where you now have 4 locations. You're about to franchise. You're healthy and you're growing. And so let's talk about that a little bit more. I know we've already touched on it a little bit, but the power of partnership. And so you've explained the Smith-Terry partnership a little bit, but what do you personally, what are some underlying values that both of you see when it comes to partnerships, effective partnerships, and how they just apply not only to business, how they can apply to any organization, and also just in life in general?
Well, I think I'll jump on that real quick, and I don't know if I'm going to give you the specifics necessarily. What I'm going to say is those values need to align. You need to have a shared value set, and I think if Dave and I go back over our roster of partnerships, and I had some partnerships that were bought in and bought out through my Jason's Deli days, through my Beef O'Brady's days. That alignment probably wasn't quite there in many, in all cases, actually. And I think Dave would probably speak to that of his initial Chop Chop partnership. And I'll tag into that real quick. Again, not quite to the specifics, but as he's speaking of his relationship with the bank, I think the strength of his relationship, being somebody that's watched the growth of that relationship from a debtor to a partner, if you will, really starts with the value set. As I've gotten to know some of his partnerships in the banking business and developed those same relationships with the Happy State team, it's a shared value, and that is of empowering people. Our bankers want to give us an opportunity to grow. We want to give our people an opportunity to grow. So through his trial and tribulation, that partnership was developed. And I think if he wouldn't have gone through those rough times, we probably would be, we wouldn't be today, I don't think, or it'd be a very different circumstance. But it's more of a, my answer to that, Scott, is it's a value set that needs to align. Of course, it's not gonna be perfect. You're gonna have differences. In fact, that's the dynamic that makes a partnership so strong, I think, is the differences that we share and evaluating how to best grow from that. But I guess that's my theory. How do you feel more detail wise?
Yeah, and one of the things in aligning those values, we looked at a social contract. You know, I didn't want, because David was full-time in this business. I mean, he's full-time Chop Chop. He had sold his Beef O'Brady's. He made a financial commitment. He made a family commitment. I mean, there was a lot of emotions from him coming into this partnership that I think we needed to align from a social standpoint. We don't live to work. We work to live. And so we wanted this business to be something that could be for our lifestyle. And so he gave me a lot of grace in the things that I was doing outside of Chop Chop. And so the social contract, I think if I'm talking to nonprofits out there, you're aligning yourself with a lot of people. They need to, or teammates or whatever, everybody needs to be able to work in their strengths. You also need to be conscious of how each other spends time and be okay with that. You know, if I'm encouraging him to get out of here on a Friday afternoon and go play golf or whatever, or if he's playing golf, I know he's getting his work done. You know, he's doing what he said he would do. And so good communication, I think, enhances that. You know, but we really just have to really understand also our skill sets, what we bring to the table. I like the financial side of this is something that I feel very comfortable about. I trust him to manage our operations and to make sure that everything that needs to be done operationally, that's really within his wheelhouse. Managers don't necessarily want me to come into the restaurant and tell them how to cook rice. That's not going to be a good scenario.
Well, and he brings up a great point, and it's one that I probably don't spend enough time revisiting, but it's one that I do revisit, and I don't. It's a real good bullet point to jot down, but that social contract. Yeah. We did it at Calico County, if I'm not mistaken, right, where we started that. It was such an important step to me. I think the partnership always is fueled by the vision, is always fueled by the excitement. But what we did, we took a step back, and this was all his doing. It's not anything that I've ever heard, but it truly is probably one of the most valuable things we did. We took a step back and really spoke to what our expectations were going to be and what I promised to deliver, what he promised to deliver. And it did dole down, if I remember correctly, into some of how we're spending our time on a daily basis before we're even partners. Not an exciting thing, but certainly spelling out that his family life and my family life were mutually important to each other. So that contract steps down out of the nitrous fueled vision down into, hey, this is what day-to-day is going to look like, and this is what I'm going to expect from you. And I really think that is the cornerstone of what this company's built on, is that I've never questioned what he expects of me, and I don't think he's ever questioned what I expect of him.
But it all starts with you making that agreement to say, hey, we're going to both agree to this. We're going to commit to this 100%. We're going to make this.
That's right.
Well, and opening up what I know my strengths are and where I'm going to need you to fill in. And vice versa. Operationally, he knows that that's where I needed to be plugged in.
So that makes a good point, because and I see this translating perfectly out into the nonprofit world. I tell clients all the time, it's like the analogy I use is like it's a bicycle tire. The tire and the hub of the bicycle that represents your community. The center part represents your cause. In your case, Chop Chop, it's a business, and you need to connect to the community in the best way possible. But what makes a bicycle tire operational, it's the spokes. And what that represents is different skill sets, different areas, different facets of a company, or with a nonprofit, the hub is your cause that you serve, whether it be poverty or hunger or whatever it is. But there's different elements that connect that cause to your community and make it fully functional and operational. And my advice is to always figure out first, what is your spoke? What are you good at? And embrace that and be the best at it that you can. But then figure out what other spokes are necessary to really make this bicycle tire fully functional and make it work in the right way. And then partner with them and leverage that. And so, I mean, that explains what both of you did as individuals, but I think it applies to any organization, whether you're for-profit, nonprofit. It's identifying, again, identifying your skill sets, identifying what else you need, what are the other spokes that are necessary to make this fully functional and optimized, and then going out and figuring out who that is, who can be that spoke on your tire, and then letting that spoke do its job in the best way that it knows how.
As you grow, those will change. You kind of have to resystemize as growth occurs, and I came into this business as an owner, and that was a little different perspective. I was not the guy that was the doer in the restaurants day to day. But man, I lacked so much in the operational context for this business, and that was where I knew if we were going to grow to another level, we had to go to another level operationally, and that's where David was so key in that. And there would have never been a second store had he not invested in Come On. I didn't, those systems, in order to grow, in order to develop, the systems and processes have to be there that inform the team that build the business.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about how big of a role did systems and processes play within Chop Chop as an organization to take it from the point where it was in 2017 to where it is today?
Aside from the people, it's the most important thing we've got. It's as a franchisor, as somebody out there trying to sell an opportunity, help people achieve their dreams like me by buying a franchised restaurant. It's the systems. There's amazing food everywhere. From a consumer standpoint, there's amazing food everywhere. From an investor standpoint, there's a lot of great concepts out there. And what differentiates is specifically the systems. Support, initial operational systems, marketing systems. What are the best practices we've developed, and how do we systemize that best practice? It really is, other than I guess if our people are the heart, the systems are the backbone of our organization.
And you can't, the thing that I tried to connect when in 2007, Scott, was, I had a manager that was there all the time, and his idea, was not to write these systems down, but I've got them in my head. I know them. I can train people. And, what happens if you get hit by a bus? How's the organization going to continue? And I kept trying to push and push. We've got to get these systems ingrained in people. I mean, systems from how we open and how we close. And just, gosh, in every organization, people appreciate boundaries. And without those boundaries, people will never grow, people will never develop. And that was one of the things that David and I absolutely agreed on, was that we are in the people business, and we want people to be successful professionally, but we also want to give them an opportunity to be successful personally.
Yeah.
That was a huge alignment of values. And he's great at developing people, but he's done it through systems that work. And I think that is so key in organizational development, that those systems allow people to be successful, allow them to humanize the expectation, a little bit. You've got the system that systemizes the routine, but when a customer comes up to you and something gets outside the routine, you've got to have somebody with the wherewithal and the attitude and the ability, the heart to make that customer experience, give them feedback, give them what they need to enhance that customer experience.
That's right. Yeah.
We've
So
got systems that work, but we hire people based on their attitude and train them for their skills.
Well, and those systems additionally empower those people to be successful in achieving your company's goal. Whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, there's a goal. And how do you employ or empower your people to reach that goal and feel an important part of the wheel, if you will? It's through those systems. It's giving them the tools to make them successful.
That's right. Yeah. So natural life cycle, it usually starts off with a launch and learn. You're launching an organization, whether it's nonprofit, for-profit, you're excited and you begin to get into a growth mindset, a growth phase. But I see there's a lot of people that can sometimes plateau in that before they get to that next life cycle stage, which we could call predictable success or however you want to term it. But the stage where you're sustainable, you're truly sustainable. And what we find a lot of times is that the thing that's holding organizations back to get from one phase to the other is just like what we're talking about, is developing that systematic process, so systems and processes to not only know how things are done, but to also empower your staff to do with the best work that they can, and to know exactly what's expected of them and how to do it. And
I think it's our job as leaders to give people tools to be successful. And otherwise, you're going to be doing it yourself. And
that's right.
There's a shift that has to occur from me just managing my time or me just managing other people to really thinking about how do we grow an organization. And, David and I have never been CEOs of a 4-chain restaurant. We've never been CEOs of a franchise company. So we rely on each other a lot and our skill sets and our strengths and our partnership. But that's a big thing to lead in that organization. So we're learning constantly how to do that, how to better do that. But it's done with constant communication and that constant thing of, hey, bring us your ideas. We want to grow. We don't know everything, but here's where we're going. Come on board with us. But let's go through this together.
And I think it takes the 2 steps back, 1 step forward approach away. Those systems that we have in place give us a floor that we know there's going to be an operational level of success there. So the efficiencies those systems provide us give us the runway to learn, if you will. How do we grow a bigger corporate office? How do we grow a franchise support system? And then so on there. The efficiency gives us that ability to learn a little bit.
That's right. So we work with clients that are of all shapes and sizes, from 150 employees to just 1 to 2. I'm interested to hear from you, though. When is the best time to start developing systems and processes within an organization?
I think the easy answer is immediately.
Yeah.
I'm visiting with one unit guy right now that I'm kind of helping trying to develop some efficiency in his business so he can work on this second project he's doing. But to that point earlier, it's kind of 2 steps back that we need to integrate some systems and efficiency in his current breadwinner, if you will, give him that runway. So there's no time not to build those systems, to build those efficiencies.
Because without that efficiency, it doesn't allow you to scale the way or to optimize that growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you can't manage what you don't measure. So the questions of how am I spending my time? How am I spending my money? Am I delivering my product or service consistently? And do I, if you have customers or whatever in the nonprofit world, clients or patrons or whatever. So how am I spending my time? How am I spending my money? How are we delivering consistently? And then what activities are most important? And those are the things that you begin to systemize.
Well,
in a routine.
Yeah, and dialing that back, if you don't have systems in place that give you time to evaluate what he just said, you don't have any controllables there. In other words, you don't know where to spend your time. You're just kind of playing catch up. You're letting the business run you.
Absolutely. Being all people.
Yeah.
Constantly putting out fires.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you talked about 7 habits. We can also bring in kind of that matrix of within that context of doing what's urgent or doing what's important. Being in spending time doing the things that are important rather than just my hair's on fire, I need to put this out.
Yeah. So that kind of leads to the last and final concept that I wanted to talk about today, but it's about having a growth mindset. And so I'd like to start out with, what's your definition of a growth mindset?
Really, that's when a growth mindset is when people believe that their abilities can be developed and you're not just stuck. The growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset is that I can develop skills. I can enhance my abilities. I'm not just given what I'm given and that's it. So I think it starts with there, the ability to continually learn and to develop and enhance qualities through lifelong learning. And so that's kind of the thought of a growth mindset. But having a growth mindset means that we accept failure as a normal course of process. And so we're constantly challenging ourselves to be better. We're constantly challenging the process around us and challenging the people that we have around us to help us to be better. I think that's kind of my thought about a growth mindset, as opposed to that fixed mindset that says, man, I'm just given what I'm given and that's it. And I think we all know those people.
So it's kind of the difference between operating from a position of scarcity as opposed to a position of abundance.
Absolutely.
And having that mindset. Now, I'd like to back up and just ask, how important was that for you, David Terry, in 2007, to maintain that kind of mindset?
I wanted to grow, but I knew at that moment that I couldn't do it all by myself. So there was a little bit of a retrenchment mode. But that growth mindset meant that, man, I need to depend on my partners. I need to depend on the bank. and I can put together a plan that the bank is going to get paid. They're not going to get paid all their money right now, but I'm going to do what I can. And I believe that at some point we're going to get to a point where I can pay you your full loan value. And
Exactly. Yeah.
That was kind of my mindset going into this. This isn't going to beat me. This isn't going to drag me down. I've got a full-time job, but it's go time.
So that leads to exactly what I expected to hear from you, but it's about it's about having expectations. And you had an expectation, not that, I'm sure there were probably moments in time where you thought, oh man, we're screwed. How are we going to do this? But underneath all of that, the overarching drive that you had was an expectation that no, we're not going to fail. We're going to survive. Yeah. And we're going to get through this.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between dreaming and a growth mindset. Everybody's got dreams. Growth mindset is defined by the willingness to fight through it.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's so true. Oh, yeah. So tell us a little bit about that, about how when you have that growth mindset, how does that affect the way other people react to you and experience you with regard to expectations?
Of your expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So you set the bar, for your organization, and people will rise to your level of expectation, or we help them go find a career in other places.
Yeah, you bet.
Kind of how that.
Well, I look back at my mentor relationships. I look back at the bar they were setting, at the vision they were casting, and the tools they were using to incorporate me into that. I think the people that want to grow will rise up to that. The people that want to dream will and I'm a dreamer. I believe in dreams, but I do want to work towards them. But the people that want to grow, and I think there are a lot more of them out there than we give credit for in every organization. I just think they need the spark of a vision. And to Dave's point, I think we're good at sparking certain people's vision. I think there's always going to be a character set or trait set that just doesn't click necessarily with person A or B. But I think there's a lot of people out there that mentorship, the relational, Scott, you and I've had a lot of time to visit and get to know each other over the years. And just those moments that we spend together, I know we inspire and make each other think. I think that's out there. I really do.
And Scott, let me add on to that. I remember when I first took over in 2007, what David said about just that spark of a vision. Those people knew I was going to take care of them. They were getting paid every week. I changed. One of the first things I did was change to a biweekly payroll, just so I could control cash better. And instead of having to pay that paycheck out every week when everything else was due, we went to a biweekly payroll. They hadn't been paid for 2 weeks when I took over. That was another issue. So I came in and made all of them good, and they knew at that point that I had their back. And miraculously, I had friends telling me, man, what'd you do to the rice? It tastes a whole lot better. I didn't know anything to do with the rice. I just made people at the restaurant happier about their jobs because they knew they were going to get paid.
Wow.
And so that was just something that kind of jogged when he said spark a vision. But, it's our role to set that vision. And the Bible says where we're without vision, people perish. And I think that's a real key to that growth mindset. We've got to be moving forward and, here's the hill, let's take it, kind of a mentality.
That's right. That's great. Well, so we've come to a point in time in the podcast that I'd like to open up the floor to anyone who has questions. So anybody who's on with us today, if you have a question, you should have the option down on your controls on your screen. It says raise hand. And when you click that button, it will notify me that you have a question, and that is first come, first serve. And so I would like to, like I said, open that up. And so if you do have a question, go ahead and raise your hand now. And I'd like to, and what I could do then is I will give you the opportunity to speak and ask any questions. So does anybody have any questions right now? So we got a quiet crowd. This is the first webinar, and that's fine. And that's okay. So as groups grow, I anticipate that we'll have more questions. But I want to share real quick before we leave just the amazing advice that I've received from y'all today, and how it can apply to any organization. But for success to happen, to come, even if you're at a point of where you're at risk or you're in crisis, step one is to honestly assess, where am I strong, where am I not, and then fill those gaps. And the way you did that is through partnership, and that way any organization can do that is through partnership. And partnerships, I think, can sometimes come in a formal way and informal way as well. For example, David Smith, you talked about earlier how you and I we've had conversations, and we share with each other, and we build on those, and we help each other with our mindset and mentor each other. I view that as a partnership. So we have those types of partnerships. Then we have formal partnerships like you and David Terry, where it's where you've signed an official contract. But all of those work together. And without that partnership, without you leveraging your strengths with the strengths of others, I don't think we could ever have an expectation to optimize the work that we do, whatever that work may be, whether it's for profit, where it's feeding hungry children, trying to overcome poverty, or whether it's running a restaurant like what you do. Without that, we can't have an expectation of that. The second thing with that is, in order to optimize your partnerships and optimize your approach to the way that you get work done, systems and processes are essential. They are critical for any organization. Without them, you can never have an expectation to run in an efficient way. And personally, this is a lesson that I continue to learn, and I've learned myself. I started this as a one-man show, and did it for 6 years until we grew. And then I had to teach myself that, hey, I need to take everything that's in here and get it down into a formalized system so I can effectively train the people who work with me and empower them to do great work. And that's going to enable me to scale and to grow even more. Which leads to the fourth and final point. Without that growth mindset, it's going to be hard for us to ever dream of achieving anything. And so if we're always operating from a point of fear, from anxiety, it's going to happen. We're going to have anxiety. We're going to have worries. We're going to have fear every now and then. But if we continually operate from that perspective, as opposed to a perspective of strength, empowerment, and a perspective of expectation for success, I don't think we could ever expect to see growth or success within our organization. And so that's my takeaway from what you guys shared with us. And I think that it is incredibly valuable information. And I definitely have loved this time that we had to spend together. So is there any final thoughts that y'all have before we get off the webinar today?
Well, I obviously just want to thank you for including us. It's been a lot of fun, and I always enjoy telling and listening to the Chop Chop story. If there's one takeaway, systems are amazing. Mentorships, relationships are amazing. Partnerships can be amazing. Just need to identify common values, goals. Partnerships are a really good thing. That's right.
Gotcha. I just have one last thought, and I want to end on this. what are some tips or some advice that you would like to share with us in closing on how to maintain a growth mindset during difficult times?
Gosh.
Wow. It kind of, for me, Scott, it really is about my relationship with Jesus Christ, and David and I share, that common belief that that's our bedrock. That's what's most important to me, and I don't want to compromise that value. We also think about the people that have entrusted us with their care, and that's not just our families, but also our employees. And when I was thinking about writing those checks to those people, it empowered me to keep going, keep moving. We're going to make it through this. But I think it just really a lot of prayer, but communication is the key. It's not a time when you're in a bad situation to just kind of entrench yourself. I think a big part of that is talking to other people, having an outlet, whether that's your banker or a coach, a friend, a spouse, getting some outside input, because a lot of times we get up in our head and we get too close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it for me. He answered it just as well.
Great. Yeah, that's great. Well, so before we leave, whoever's on the webinar, on the podcast with us today, and anyone who listens to this afterwards, whether you attended today or not, one thing that I'd like to leave with is a challenge. And the challenge is to take a step back and look at yourself and figure out, what are you good at? What are you not so good at? And then identify who are some partners that I currently have who might could fill some of those voids. And who are some that I need to make partnerships with? Who are some people that I need to be involved with, people or organizations, individual or companies? And then think about within your day-to-day work, within your organization, how are your systems and processes? Take a inventory of that as well. Identify where you're strong, where you're weak, and then lastly, continually think about what kind of a mindset am I operating from? Am I operating with an expectation of success, that true growth mindset? Or am I making decisions and operating more on that from the other side of the spectrum based on fear and anxiety? So with that, I hope that gives you something to work on over the next few weeks. And so again, thank you all for being a part of this. The Davids, I cannot tell you enough. Thank you for being a part of this. The information you shared is it's priceless. You can't put a price tag on it. It's so valuable, and I've learned so much today that I'm going to be able to take and move forward. So thanks again. I appreciate everything.
Thank you.
For including us.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.